Robert is a NASCAR driver, jet captain, and author of the book Prayer at Full Throttle: How Performance-Based Prayer Make Miracles Happen. And I definitely want to talk about prayer with Robert. Uh, Winning and praying. And he's really, we're Skyping with Robert. Robert, good morning, sir.
Hey, good morning. It's a pleasure to be with you, and hello to all of your audience.
Yes, sir. It's an honor to be with you. It's interesting that, and I've always been interested in NASCAR drivers, in that it seemed to be such a risky thing to do. How did you get into that and why?
Well, I'll tell you what, it's a really interesting story that I think a lot of people can connect with. When I was a little kid, I really believed God had built me to race cars. And like so many kids with dreams, everybody laughed at me. I grew up in a suburb of Minneapolis. Nobody races cars for a living. And if I didn't have racing, I had nothing, man. I'm telling you, I was the skinniest little run in school. I was that kid that was picked last in gym class every day. I'm serious. In fact, Jesse, I graduated from high school 5'10", 130 pounds. I was a bone thin klutz.
Wow.
And then in college, somewhat out of frustration, I did something nobody that I knew had done. I read the New Testament, kind of out of spite. And here's what I learned: when you think you're not worth anything, when you have no confidence, when you just don't know what life has in store for you, you're a prime target. You're a totally empty vessel to
Yeah.
give the power of God. And I as I read, it was amazing. I saw all these journeys that I was supposed to take to prove the word of God was true. The first of which was to go get my black belt, which everybody laughed at that too. But I launched into corporate America. I built myself a jet flying career. But Jesse, I always knew that someday I'd get behind the wheel of a race car, and we did that 8 years ago. And here's what I figured out right away: is that if you will just have the courage to step into the dreams God puts into your mind, that those things you see in your imagination, those things you feel in your heart. The minute I started racing, um, the number of lives we started touching, the children's lives, we started seeing miracles happen around the car. And then the reason I'm talking to you today is that we finally caught a couple of those miracles on film, and we wrote a book called Prayer at Full Throttle, which was a book I never intended to write. I just did. And the reality of it was, it became a bestseller in 3 weeks. It
Wow.
traveled the entire globe in 4.5 months. It's a two-time #1 Amazon bestseller, and it's completely changed my life. So the big message for today is: stop listening to negativity, stop listening to divisiveness, stop listening to class warfare, believe in the perfect person God built you to be, and become that person.
And once again, folks, the book is Prayer at Full Throttle: How Performance-Based Prayer Make Miracles Happen. So, are you able to tell me or explain to me, as a kid, what did it feel like within yourself, knowing that your purpose is to become a NASCAR driver? Is there like a feeling, or is it a knowing, or is there, what's going on with that?
It's really something. I knew it. Jesse, I was so little when I knew this. And I was wearing, this is the funniest thing. You know what those like union suit pajamas look like, where it's one piece and it even has the little feet in the bottom of it?
Yes.
I had a green union suit set of pajamas with these little white vinyl footy things in them. And I walked up to a TV screen during a NASCAR race on TV, and I touched the TV screen and I said, "This is what I want to do." And it never went away. But I mean, I knew it. I was enthralled with it. But what's so important is that people laughed at me all the time
Yeah.
for having that dream. And it's almost like when God gives you something, the world is going to reject it. And we don't like being laughed at. We hate it more than anything. And so we go do something else. But listen up. Albert Einstein said, this is brilliant. He said, everyone is a genius, but if we judged a fish on its ability to climb a tree, it would spend its entire life believing it's stupid.
Yeah.
And so many people, Jesse, they're fish trying to climb trees. You know, they got to get back in the water and be that person God created them to be.
That is so true. I absolutely agree. One other quick point: when
Yeah.
you're driving, so now you're driving, and when you're on the speedway there, racing against others, going really fast, you're sitting in the car. What are you thinking? And what are you seeing at that rate of speed?
Well, you know, it's really interesting because all of us that, you know, we were kind of closet racers, we race on the street or whatever, you know, it makes you think you're really fast. But when you get on a racetrack with other people that really are really fast,
Yes.
you you can have the pedal all the way down and you realize, you know, you're not leaving anybody. They're still next to your door. But you know, the feeling is amazing. The one thing no one can appreciate is how close the other cars are and how close the concrete wall is.
Yep.
I've never once for 1 second been afraid, but what you learn, because you know, I support all of my own racing. I'm the driver, I'm the mechanic, I'm a one-man band. And what I figured out right away is crashing is really expensive.
That's right.
So I'm more worried about crashing than anything
So you're
because
not thinking about your life or you might get killed. You're not like fearing death or anything like that.
well, no, in fact, that's a great point. I'm so glad you brought it up because, you know, I'm also a jet captain and I spent time as an aerobatic flight instructor, which means flying upside down and doing loops. And people ask me a lot. They say, aren't you ever afraid of getting killed in the airplane? Or aren't you ever afraid of getting killed in a race car? And my answer is always the same. No, because I believe that I am doing what God is asking me to do to prove to everyone that all things are possible, that miracles happen, that dreams become real. And he took this skinny little kid who was picked last in gym class every single day to prove to the world that nothing is impossible. I'm not doing it. He is.
Yeah.
God will never let me get hurt or killed doing something that he's asking me to do.
You know, I read that you are a jet captain, and that means that you teach others, and you in those jet things you fly upside down. What's that like being in a jet upside down?
Well, the plane we fly upside down isn't a jet. I fly a private jet for a business owner in Minneapolis. And listen, flying a private jet is the coolest career on planet Earth. It's really awesome. And flying upside down, it scared me. But like so many other lessons in life, you have to confront your fear, and that's how it goes away. And my logic was that really, if an airplane ever did get upside down, I didn't want to have to figure it out at that moment. I wanted to be upside down first, so I knew what to do. And so, but the shocking reality of turning an airplane over on its back, these are the little subtleties. You know, we're wearing shoulder harnesses. Well, all of the weight, quite frankly, is on your fanny when you're sitting in a pilot seat. When you roll it upside down, your whole body drops into the shoulder harnesses. So now you have the entire weight of your body on your shoulders with these straps, which is a feeling I'd never had before.
Right.
The other things I didn't expect, and this was the startling part. It's kind of funny, but all of the little sand particles and so on from your shoes that are on the floor of the airplane, well, they fall right past your face and hit the ceiling. Some of it kind of gets in your eyes, and you can hear the little sand pebbles go tickety tick as it hits the ceiling, and then the handheld microphone comes out of its jack, and that springs out and hits the ceiling. And so it's really quite disorienting. And I'm so glad that I had done it. But what I also found out was I loved it. Something that terrified me became something I fell in love with, and I actually would become an aerobatic flight instructor and introduce that same thing to other people. And flying and doing loops and rolls and all those things is kind of like a roller coaster ride, but it's much, much smoother, and the view is 100 times better.
That's amazing, Robert. I never considered all those things happening when you turn it upside down, but the sand on the floor and everything come down on you. That makes sense. I read that you were running a multi-million-dollar company at age 24. Can you briefly explain that to us?
Oh, yeah. In fact, and I go back to reading the New Testament in college because everything that unfolded in my life, including my corporate career, was all Bible based. I had picked up the New Testament in a soft cover version. I called it the Wherefore Art Thou Romeo and Juliet version. It was hard to read. It was called the King James. I didn't know that then. And so then I got a soft cover paraphrased edition, which was like the New Testament for dummies for guys like me. And one of the things that it said was that I should throw myself into my tasks so that other people could see my improvement and progress. That was one of the half a dozen scriptures that really registered with me, along with things like all things are possible and those who use well what they have been given shall be given abundance, and be the light on the hill that cannot be hidden. None of that stuff I ever heard in church, by the way, ever. Not in my organized religion. I had to read it for myself.
Right.
Well, what happened was I got out of college and I got started in cable television right away. And quite frankly, the power of God just worked through me. I did in fact throw myself into my tasks so that other people would notice my improvement and progress. And I'd started out in almost an entry level position in Minnesota's largest cable television company, and in 9 months I was running it. It would become double its size, and that really propelled my business career. And you'll also find out, by the way, when you do stuff like that, you can irritate a lot of people because when people are working somewhere for years and years and years, and some punk kid comes out of college and got past them, that didn't go over very big. But I found out I had a real skill set for marketing. So then we went from local cable television system management into the juggernaut of shop at home cable television, and shop at home TV just exploded. I know it's boring to a lot of people, but it was just a very, very successful business career for me in television, and that's how I paid for my flying career. I actually flew myself into a jet flying career, and there again, people said it couldn't be done. It would take too long, take too much money. I'd be too old. I've been a jet captain now for 17 years. So the question is, if I would have listened to all that negativity and all the people that told me it couldn't be done, where would I be today?
Yeah.
We have to remember, and this is a big day, Jesse. It's an election day, and we have to decide as a nation. I guess I'm making a sidebar here, but we have to make a decision today. Are we the greatest nation on earth? Are we a God-blessed nation? Are we a nation where all things are possible and anybody can rise and anybody can succeed? Or are we a nation that's beaten? Are we a nation of people that's going to look for handouts and let our dreams die? And we can't let that happen today because there's so much blessing on this country and so much opportunity. And I truly believe, God put these calls on my life, Jesse, to be just one of many people who are out there trying to set an example for people to believe in the perfect person God built you to be. Stop worrying about what the person next to you is doing, and walk into your calling. Walk into it. In fact, remember this. I hate to be long-winded, but this is a huge story. David didn't kill Goliath. Everybody says David killed Goliath, but he didn't. If you read the book, God killed him. When David said, I'm going to take out Goliath, everybody laughed at him and said, no, he's going to feed you through a meat grinder. But David said, no, on this day the Lord will deliver him. And then he did what most people are afraid to do. He ran at the thing that scared everybody the most. He ran at him, he loaded a slingshot with a stone, he twirled it over his head, and he fired the rock. And that is the perfect example of what, the book that we wrote, the subtitle is Performance-Based Prayer.
Yes.
Little David charging Goliath and loading that slingshot and twirling the rock and firing the stone. That's a perfect example of what performance-based prayer is, because that's how miracles come down. That's how God works right through the palm of your hands. It's when you do what he's asking you to do, and that'll give him the opportunity to work a miracle right through the hands of the common man.
That makes so much sense. Um, so when you started with the cable company, you started out as a manager there. That was your first.
No, no, I was right out of college and I started, it's really funny. I was actually working as an intern at a local sports department for the local NBC affiliate, but it was an unpaid internship and I needed a job.
Yeah.
And so they posted I just happened to see a posting of all things for a customer service representative. So, you know what I did? I took a job as a customer service rep right out of college, and on my third day in the cable company, they posted a job for a brand newly created marketing position. And so I applied for that and I got it. I was only a customer service rep for about 3 days. And man, I'll tell you, marketing is a great career to set big goals and work hard.
Yeah.
When I was 24 years old, I was running Minnesota's largest, most profitable cable company. I had a company car, corner office, credenza, sofa, company car, three-piece suit, and that would launch my business career. Pretty much went crazy.
David, tell the folks how to get. I mean, I'm sorry, Robert. Tell the folks how to get your book.
Well, the book is entitled Prayer at Full Throttle. I'm excited to tell you it's a two-time #1 Amazon bestseller. Very easy to read, very quick to read. It's available at Amazon.com, Prayer at Full Throttle. Or if you'd like a signed copy of the paperback, and I'll put in a little Christmas plug, you can get a signed copy of the paperback at RobertBakkeMinistries.com. It's Bakke, Robert Bakke Ministries, Bakke.com. If you can't remember that, just Google Prayer at Full Throttle and you'll find it. It's all over the internet. And thank you for giving me a chance to provide that information, Jeff.
Absolutely. I appreciate you staying over a little bit for us. I have a test question for you. What would you advise those who do not know what their talent is?
Oh, great question. I get this a lot. Okay, first of all, if you don't know what it is, sometimes people will actually be telling it to you, but you're not necessarily tuned in to listen. What I mean by that is people might tell you things like, you're really good with numbers, or, geez, you could sell anything. People just give you those little pieces. You're very articulate. You should be a radio announcer, or you're a great writer. You should write a book. People will actually tell you those things.
That is so true, Robert.
Yeah, I mean, they will. Just listen to what people tell you. But even more importantly, stop worrying about what other people are doing with their lives, like what they're doing with their careers or what they're driving, because God built you perfect. And the Word of God says that if you will come close to God, okay, that means like stop what you're doing and start praying. The Word of God says that if you will come close to God, He will not only give you the desires of your heart, He'll show them to you, but it also says that He'll help you make them come to pass. So come close to Him, He'll show them to you, and He'll even help you if you stay close to Him. And you really pay attention to your imagination. In fact, one of the scriptures that I read in college, this will really knock your shoes off. One of the scriptures I read in college said, gird up the loins of your mind. And I thought, okay, what in the world does gird up the loins of your mind mean? So I got this big fat thing called a concordance, and it breaks all this stuff down for you. And here's what that means, and I encourage everybody to remember this. It means strengthen the procreative power of your imagination. Strengthen the procreative power of your imagination. That's telling you that when God is putting images in your imagination, and they're probably the images people are going to laugh at you for, all right, those images have a procreative power. So remember that, and then remember David. David didn't sit and do nothing. David got up off his chair, and he charged at the things that scared everybody the most, and that's when God came down and worked through him. So that's my advice for people in that position.
That's good advice. You used the word unfolded. Things unfolded for you. What does unfolded mean? What does it look like?
Well, what I found out is that if you'll just start the journey, the doors are going to open, and you won't know what those doors necessarily are, but in advance, but you'll see them open. As a matter of fact, let's take car racing. I always thought, and it was really funny, Jesse, because my parents would say, and I love my parents, don't get me wrong, but they have a 5-year-old saying, "I'm going to race cars for a living," but they would say, "Well, why would have God built you to race cars?"
Yeah.
And this is what I thought. I was totally wrong, though. I was totally wrong. I said, well, because I'm God's child, and all parents want their children to have fun. So God built me in a way that I'll have fun racing, and He'll get a kick out of that. It was all about me. But here's what I didn't realize. The minute I got behind the wheel of the race car, it was fascinating to me. Not only were we seeing the craziest things happen no one could explain, and I'm not talking about necessarily racing or winning or losing.
Right.
It might have been driving through an accident no one could have possibly gotten through on their own or whatever. But the amount of children that were coming up to the car after the races, the kids that we were putting behind the wheel and taking their pictures, and I have the kids promise me that no one will ever let them talk them out of their dreams. And I have them sign a contract, which is I let the kids write their name right on the paint of my race car. And that's a contract between them and myself that no one will ever talk them out of their dreams. And so that was the first step of seeing how my getting into racing was now suddenly becoming a discipleship in the racing arena. And then, of course, these miracles started to manifest even bigger. And then, of course, we ended up writing a book called Prayer at Full Throttle. Do you believe Prayer at Full Throttle has been on live television in every region of the entire world? And that's not me. That's not me. But what you're seeing is your question of unfolding. What was unfolding was how, by following the call of God on my life, God was starting to touch other people. I had become a messenger, and whether it was photographs of little kids in cars, or believing in their dreams, or being asked to come and talk at schools, and starting to share these things, and then the book hit, and then pretty soon I'm speaking in churches. I spoke in Hawaii's largest church, Hawaii's mega church. It's called New Hope in Oahu. That's all because I stepped into my childhood dream of auto racing, and it's all unfolding. It's unfolding right now, Jesse, sitting here talking to you.
Yeah, I agree with that. Um, are you ever concerned, or is it on your mind, winning or losing? Is that part of your thinking?
You know what? Racing now isn't really about winning or losing. Don't get me wrong, winning feels really good, and particularly when you race like I do without a crew.
Yeah.
I'm 3 steps behind when I get there.
Yeah.
What's most important to me is following the call of God on my life. In fact, I don't know how much time we have left, but I'll say this. Um, the year before I started racing, I was living the life of Riley. I mean, I've done pretty well. I've got every toy you can imagine, but then I got deathly ill. I had a case of salmonella that almost killed me.
Oh.
And it did. It almost killed me. I was actually laying in what I thought was my deathbed, and I was reading my will, and I was reviewing my life. And I had this is a giant lesson for everybody. I had a horrible knot in my stomach that I was going to meet God, and I had never, ever done what He had asked me to do. In the story of the talents, the person who was the servants that are most productive hear the words, well done, good and faithful servant.
Yeah.
And that always stuck with me. And here I had said since childhood that God had built me to race cars, and I had never done it. And I was horrified with guilt. And so I told my mom, I said, if I recover from this, my cabin cruiser goes, and we're going racing. Because I was too afraid to meet God and be in a position where I had left that gift unused. And that's such a valuable lesson that when your life is over, you're going to look back and you're going to have severe regrets for the things that you didn't do.
Yeah.
So much so, count me down if we're going to run out of time. But in 2012, there was a survey. You can Google it. It's called Top 5 Regrets of the Dying. It was a survey done of hospice patients. And I'm scooting along here. The number one regret of a hospice patient is that they wish they would have lived a life true to themselves, as opposed to the life someone else had expected of them.
Yeah.
That's how most people are living. Don't let that be you.
Amazing. I got to ask this. I read that you avoid organized religion. Is that true? And explain that to us.
Well, it's really interesting. I grew up, spent most of my life in an organized religion that never one time ever opened a Bible. I even got in a couple of arguments with the pastor because I really believed we should be reading the Bible in church. And that would never happen. I ended up leaving the church. It was interesting to me, Jesse, that I grew up being told that if I believed in God, that I was supposed to be weak, passive, live in poverty,
Yeah.
live in shadows. If someone pushed me, I was supposed to fall down. But we're not just made in God's image, we're made in His nature. So if
Yes.
our God is almighty and He's all powerful, and His Son says that all things are possible and that we are to be strong and courageous and to speak boldly, well, what's up with being told we're supposed to be weak? So I did a little research. This will knock your listeners right over. If you Google the original Greek definition of the word religion, it is return to bondage or the bondage of men. That's the original Greek definition of religion. In a negative, there's a positive context, negative context. And it's also really interesting that Jesus is described as meek, but the original Greek translation of the word meek is strength under control. And so, it's just really interesting to
Yeah.
me. My definition of an organized religion is a religion that keeps the Bible closed. And I think they kind of have to do that because, if you read the 23rd chapter of Matthew, that's easy to remember. The 23rd chapter of Matthew, the whole chapter, the entire chapter, is Jesus condemning the teachers of religion. And so
Yeah.
I encourage everybody, read a New Testament for yourself and get the truth.
You you talk about prayer. How do you pray?
Well, you know what? I'm really glad you asked me that because I used to only talk to God when I needed Him for something. And that's how most people pray. They go about their life just kind of doing their thing, and then when they get in trouble, well, then they come to God looking for something. They only call Him when they need Him for something. Well, we don't like it when people do that to us. So why would He like it? Here's how this is my day. When I wake up in the morning, the first thing I say every day is good morning, God. And I start my coffee, to be honest with you. But then I read my Bible, might be for 5 minutes, might be for 20 minutes, and then I pray. So I get up, I say, good morning, God. I read my Bible, and then I pray. That's the start of my day. And then when I get into my car and I go to work, I have my car filled with faith-filled CDs and Christian radio stations. So I'm listening to the Word every minute I'm in the car. And so, that's my prayer life. I'm in constant communication with God every single day. And above all, when you begin to pray, it's interesting. Jesus said, before you pray, and this is a tough one, He said, you must first forgive.
Yeah.
And so the first thing out of my mouth when I start praying is, I forgive anyone that I'm holding anything against.
Yeah.
And that's a rugged one for people, but that's what my prayer life looks like.
And so when you pray, when you finally get to your prayer, are you asking for things in your prayer, or you just thanking God? What do you say?
Well, I'm a big believer that we need to be far more thankful and
Yeah.
far more grateful than we are. So I try to thank God for everything every day and all the 10,000 things He's doing for us that we just kind of sort of fail to realize because we get so busy.
Were you a Catholic at one point? Were you a part of because you mentioned they never opened the Bible? It sounded like a Catholic thing.
Well, you know what? I grew up in a Lutheran church. I'll be honest with you, and then I went to college in a very German Catholic town, and got indoctrinated in the Catholicism ways. And then I met some Mormon buddies, and I kept hearing all these different opinions, and I just had to sit down and just read the book for myself. And
Yeah.
in fact, if Prayer at Full Throttle has done one thing that's most important. It has simplified the Word of God in such a way and put it in a day-to-day context that once people read it, it's only 107 pages, so it's really quick. But it has taken people, enlightened them to the Word of God, and it has brought them into the New Testament. And I urge everybody, if you have any interest in God or your faith or whatever, just start reading the New Testament on your own. And if you're involved in a ministry, get involved with a ministry that has an open Bible.
Are you out in the LA area?
Well, get out there occasionally. I'd love to stop and see you sometime.
I would love that. Let me know.
I'll do it. I'll
Yeah,
do it.
Robert Bakke, thank you so much. At Full Throttle, how performance-based prayer make miracles happen. Amazon.com. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you. Let's talk again.
All right, we will.